I believe it's fair to say that the kind of appetite and the enthusiasm for a change in the political reality is something which is tangible. It's something that you could feel, you could sense, you could see. And the kind of apathy with the state of politics that we have. And I mean, obviously, we're concentrating on the UK, but we also have a similar situation in the United States, where people are sort of tired of the fact that, you know, you seem to have this grand democratic process, which ultimately ends with two candidates, one bad, one worse. I mean, it sort of belies the very fundamental of democracy and what people want. So coming back to the UK, I mean, obviously, I think it's fair to say that it's clear that Labour will win.
Yes.
And they might win big. But the new phenomenon in what we are expecting from my conversations, from my observations, is that there are an unprecedented number of independent candidates, of candidates who belong to smaller, newer parties who have quite a significant backing. And in some cases have quite a chance of actually unseating, you know, the big party candidates. So, I mean, if we were to start from the top, why are we in this particular place where we feel that people are more, you know, more driven to create a difference to the political reality we have?
Well, I think 2017 was quite a shock for a lot of people. They didn't think that a very much left Labour Party would be so close to getting into power. And for the people who depend on that not happening, that was a massive shock. And they immediately mobilized to prevent that happening again. And I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but that's how it seems. And the number of people who were mobilized at that point to come out and vote and to go to
This is when Jeremy Corbyn was
leader, and it was that movement which was massive, and he represented the hopes and dreams of so many people. You know, I support him, and I was absolutely delighted to have him as a leader. I'd had that same politics since I was in my teens, and it was wonderful for me to see. Because one person had represented all of that. But that was very scary for a lot of people who don't want that. So where is that dream gone? Where's the dream gone? So for a lot of people, they feel, as you said, completely apathetic. I'm so fed up with politics. And I said, well, that's why I'm standing as an independent. So I've had some, you know, I've been door knocking for quite some months now. And obviously I was MP before, and I know a lot of people.
You're standing in Kensington.
I'm standing in Kensington and Bayswater. There's two wards from Bayswater, which they've added.
And as an independent?
As an independent.
Right. We're gonna come back to discuss the difficulties and opportunities of standing as an independent. But Sameh, you hail from Gaza. And obviously, probably in the bigger picture of things, Gaza is maybe the most prominent aspect of why people are all of a sudden talking once again about, you know, real change or the such.
Yeah, indeed. You know, Gaza would be maybe one big factor in many of the seats where we have strong independent candidates or candidates allying with other parties like the Workers' Party, for example. Gaza has been in the news for a very long time now, almost 200 days now. And people still think about it, talk about it. It's in everyday news, you know, in your area, like in the breakfast in the morning, when you look in the news, check the BBC, other outlets, you will see Gaza. A lot of people argue that this is not a local issue, that people don't care about, but I disagree on this. And even with the traditional conservative voters, in many seats across the country, you still have people supporting the independence of the Palestinian people, the self-determination, and totally disagree with the ongoing genocide. So Gaza, in my view, will be really like a big factor in deciding the results in many of the seats. Marginal seats, also the seats where you have traditional Labour progressive voters who are against what's happening within the Labour Party. And as you know, the Labour Party has departed from traditional values and what they stand for, not only in Gaza, but also on other issues, allowing the party to fall within the trap of the donors these days, which in many instances and examples, dictating what the Labour Party should do. For example, what happened to the Scottish Labour leader, which was kicked out after giving a 24-hour ultimate by the donors. We need to get rid of that guy. And it's happening, you know. Other than this, we have also donors like Gary Lubna. He was one of the sanctions busters in South Africa. And now he was one of the biggest Labour donors over the last few years. He paid £5 million. And imagine, you know, a Labour Party with the socialist values being funded by somebody who was a pro apartheid in South Africa. That's the state of politics we are in. It's not only Gaza, we have also other factors. Looking on how Keir Starmer steered the party from Jeremy Corbyn's era, where we have a lot of people coming and standing and supporting, as Emma said, the values of the Labour Party, into moving it a totally different direction, into a right-wing, neoliberal, neoconservative-like Labour Party. And sadly, this is what is happening now.
I think you're absolutely right in terms of, whilst Gaza might be a very important driver, but the reality is that we suffer from so many issues. I mean, the issue of the cost of living crisis, the NHS, various aspects which impact people's everyday lives.
Absolutely.
Education, public transport. The other day I was I never thought I would watch such an interesting YouTube clip for about 7 minutes on potholes. Yes. I never thought that would happen, but the reality is that these are issues which impact people every single day.
Absolutely.
And which, I mean, only today, the issue of migration and what we should do to people crossing the channel, whether we should puncture their dinghies and, force them back. I mean, it's the Rwanda law that's now been passed. And as the government says, planes are ready to leave and to fly off. And I mean, all of these things, they culminate and create this kind of momentum that we are
anti-humanitarian. That's how I see it. And both parties are playing this game, and it is horrific, actually. And as Sameh says, there's a lot of traditional conservative voters who don't like this at all either. And of course, in my patch in Kensington and Bayswater, there's a majority of non-white British born. Yeah, it's 54%. But these are migrants and refugees from all over the world who I've brought up with, and this is my normal. Is to have a huge mix of people. Why would they just say, "Oh yeah, we shouldn't let these people come over in the boats"? Because some of them did come over in boats actually, and they find that absolutely despicable. It's just the lack of humanity, both parties, and the utter betrayal of low-income families and vulnerable people that we're seeing as they squeeze on disability benefits and getting people who are sick back to work. I don't think they have any idea at all how tough life is for somebody who can't even get themselves dressed in the morning to get out and go to work, and yet they're going to be expected to do that. So, the mental health crisis in this country, we are not a first world country anymore. Yeah. And I think we have to accept that. And we've been in recession for quite some time without admitting it. And now we're in the back pocket of the United States, and we do whatever they say. And that is, we're in a very, very bad place.
So in your campaign, in where you are in Kensington and Bayswater, what are the main issues that people tell you about? What are they concerned about? What are they worried for?
It's everyday survival, a lot of it. It's everyday survival. And of course, we have a huge Muslim community as well in North Ken, many of whom are my friends and neighbours, who I've known for many years because I've been a counsellor for 18 years.
You have a big North African...
big North African, especially Moroccans, Algerians and so on. A lot of Moroccans live near me. They are hugely worried about what's going on in Gaza. And it's not only what is happening in Gaza, it's the fact that the Labour Party should be supporting them, is supporting the government and supporting the Israeli government. And they find that really shocking because Labour was their friends. And I hear constantly we will never vote Labour again. We will never vote Labour again. If you don't stand, we can vote for you if you stand, but we will never vote Labour again. So that leaves a void, actually, which I need to fill. But people feel utterly betrayed, particularly by the Labour Party that used to be on their side. Completely betrayed.
Don't you, I mean, is it not conceivable that in light of people turning away from Labour, that they might find, I don't know, refuge in the Lib Dems or the Greens or the other
I think
parties?
it's the results in the election is unexpected this time. You know, you could argue that the independents might win here. Lib Dems could win, but we've seen the performance of the Lib Dems over the last a decade or so. They haven't done very well. I think they didn't recover from the alliance that Nicky Clegg did in 2010 with David Cameron. Until now, people do not really trust him, particularly on the tuition fee, and they don't have a strategy. Not only the Lib Dems, I mean, the unexpected results here could also see some of Labour MPs even struggling. Even the good John MacDonald, he might lose some of his votes because of the position that Labour have voiced on the Gaza Strip. You know, there are many issues here that Labour is not able to tackle. You know, the issue of migration. We've seen some leaflets the past few days. I thought when I looked on what's written in these leaflets, that was a UK border reform that's anti-migrant, but written in a nice way that is, okay, secure borders, stopping the boats. So this is another traditional conservative policy, but nicely worded. I can see the Labour Party is losing many of its traditional voters here.
Yeah.
And I can see even George Galloway's party, you know, like it or not, George has some stronger presence in many of the Muslim stronghold across the country. And I think he would do some good results in the upcoming general elections.
How much of this, though, is a protest vote rather than something that will build the kind of new reality that many people seek? I mean, do you think that there's an element of people voting against rather than for something? If you know what I mean.
Well, I think this would be long term because, you know, since the I would say I always say coup, you know, this coup that undemocratic coup that Keir Starmer led against Jeremy, although some people disagree, but I think what he did was a undemocratic coup. Since then, people, the traditional base of the Labour, most of them have left. We're talking about at least from 600 plus thousand members. Now you have at least now half of them left, you know, at least 300 plus thousand still within the Labour Party. And those are the ones that are in the forefront canvassing and helping candidates with them. Most of them left. And we can see, even in my constituency, I can see the current member of parliament is going and just canvassing for another neighboring constituency.
Wow.
I think they would be struggling if we have a strong organized campaigns for all of us independents or other candidates under Workers' Party or other parties. Labour would have some difficulty in retaining these seats. Yes, they would maybe win big because people are sick of conservatives because they've been in power for 14, 15 years and people want to change. And this is the political life in general. That's the political cycle. We are on the top of the curve, as you know. You could have seen this everywhere, like even in Turkey now, you know.
Correct.
It's almost the end of Erdogan's era. It's the political cycle. And we can see this happening here. This is why Labour is going to win, maybe big. But if we have an organized movement, and sadly there's a lot of now initiatives, movements, and even Labour in a way or another, some of pro-Labour members are trying to hinder our efforts by creating some subgroups here or there to split our votes, which is really alarming. And we have to
I think you're right.
organize ourselves and to be very proactive in exposing this. Otherwise, our campaigns would be affected by this.
How much, I mean, Emma, you're obviously hoping to win as an independent, but the question is, firstly, how feasible this is.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we've talked about the kind of conditions and the context we live in, which are on many levels unprecedented.
Yes.
But I mean, in reality, how feasible is it for an independent candidate who doesn't have the mechanism of a major party, the funding of a major party, the kind of logistical support, so the team that is usually provided to candidates by their parties? How feasible is it for you to win? And secondly, what's the long-term vision? What do people stand to gain or to lose?
Yeah.
Potentially, as I'm sure your competitors will say. I mean, voting for Emma is a lost vote. It's something that won't lead to anyone. Emma's going to be on her own in the corners of Parliament, and she won't have that kind of say. She won't have that kind of voice and the such. So, in a way, you will be misrepresented. I'm pretty sure that is what's being said.
People are saying, yeah, that's what some people are saying. And interestingly, in 2017, I had very little help from the party because they thought it was a joke that I would get anywhere at all. And think that it changed over the months. And there were a lot of things that, and Jeremy was undoubtedly part of that, because we had huge, huge support from Momentum on various other groups, not from the Labour Party, because they didn't want me to win, as I now know, having read some of the background of what had happened during that
Scandalous.
time. Absolutely scandalous. So they thought it was a bit of a joke. And when I did win, there were lots of unpleasant comments within the Labour Party that I'd won. It's important to know Kensington and Bayswater, but Kensington at that time was it's not like every other borough, and it is very much a borough of two halves. And I was already known, and it's worth remembering that just under half my votes came from people living in the Tory wards, the Tory-held wards. Right. Yeah, they knew me, they trusted me. They may not be sure about my politics, but they knew that I was okay. So interesting, in 2019, when I had the world against me and the Labour Party were sabotaging my election, I now know, certain factors in the Labour Party. And, in fact, my vote increased. So obviously the Tory vote increased by a lot, and the Lib Dems took lots of my votes by saying that they were going to win and all the usual fibs that they come up with, and lied about me, said I'd been responsible for Grenfell Tower, which I had to get the police protection. It was horrible, really horrible. And they did all of that to me. Plus I was going through cancer treatment at the time during the election campaign. And despite all that, I only lost by 150 votes. So it was really close. And once again, it was a sort of a story of two sides, where a lot of people living in the Tory wards said, no, we want Emma back. She represented us properly. Because some people said I was the best constituency MP they'd ever had, because I actually care about the people I live with, and that's from all over the place. So as for what would happen next, and a lot of people saying, well, you'd be a lone voice in Parliament. Number one, I don't think I would be. I think there'd be quite a group of independents, Greens, Workers' Party, whatever else. I think there'd be quite a few of us. We will be the opposition. And they say, you'll be a lone voice. I say, well, do you know who Caroline Lucas is? They go, oh, yeah, she's the Green. I thought, well, she's been on her own. She's actually made real changes over the years.
Well, 3-4 terms now.
Yes, exactly. And she's now stepping down, but everybody knows her. Yeah. So, well, there you go. That's the difference that one voice can make. And the things that I care about are the things that people who vote for me care about.
How difficult is it to campaign? To canvas.
There is a lot of people are very, very fed up. There's no doubt about that. And getting people innovated and excited is quite difficult. But actually, you get a group and you go out on the doorstep and they're going, oh, thank heavens. I'm so pleased that you're independent now, because I couldn't vote for Labour anymore. I'm certainly not going to vote for the Tories, and I just wasn't going to vote. So a lot of people, this is why I stood, was because literally people in my neighbourhood were coming up to me and saying, Emma, because I was an independent councillor. I resigned a year ago, way before Gaza had happened, and I would have resigned then if I hadn't already. And they're saying, we've got no one to vote for. You've got to stand for Parliament again. I thought, oh, God, must I? So this is why we set up a GoFundMe, and a lot of money came in. I was really surprised, actually. So I got masses of support, getting people out there. Once they start knocking on doors, they realise the power of what we're doing. And that's what we need to do, is to get out there and talk to people very honestly. All I have to say on the doorstep is, I'm not Tory, I'm not Labour, I'm just here for you. And that's what people want to hear. Yeah. They want to hear that you're there for them. Yeah. You're not coming in with a manifesto and saying, oh, you've got to agree with this stuff. I'm asking people, what do you want in my manifesto? These are the things I'm thinking about. What have I missed? Write to me. Tell me what you think. So we're putting that together now. And it's for them. I'm not being imposed upon. Nobody's telling me what I can and can't do or say. I'm there for the people of Kensington who's voted for me twice before. So we'll see. I think, yeah.
Yeah, Sam, what are your constituents, or the constituents of you're in Ealing North?
Ealing North. Yeah.
What are people telling you? What are they worried about? What are they concerned of? And noting that you have quite a sizable Arab community, and probably an Arab community that also relates to Palestine, to Syria, to Jordan, that kind of area.
Yeah, there are many issues really. Apart from Gaza, the high cost of living is a key issue that a lot of people that we took to suffer from. Also, unaffordable homes and high rent, and this is even part of my manifesto, is to push for a cap on rent because Ealing Council is not doing enough. And also, I've noticed there's a lot of complaints about the performance of Ealing Council, which is also Labour-run council. They haven't done enough. And the dissatisfaction also with the Member of Parliament that is James Murray, Member of Parliament, he's also Labour. He's not doing enough even to criticize, to put a pressure, to lobby their council, being also part of the same Labour group. As you know, it's quite difficult maybe to criticize your counterparts, their friends within the same party. Add to this, when it comes to the Muslim and the Arabs, the issue of Islamophobia, the issue of racism is not dealt with. And they haven't seen this really Member of Parliament advocating a lot on this issue. Looking at on his parliamentary record and votes and parliamentary questions, EDMs and participation in debates on the Islamophobia is very low, really. People would have wanted to see a more proactive MP on their issues. Islamophobia is alarming. We see even within the Labour Party now, there's a hierarchy of Islamophobia within the Labour Party, and this is not dealt with. So apart from this, there are other issues as well when it comes to community centres. People want to see more community centres, after school club, tackling the knife crime as well, which is a very big concern for a lot of people in many wards where we talk to people. So these issues are not dealt with. Yes, we know that Labour is in opposition, but there are many things that could be done within the local council, which is also controlled by Labour. And people do not think that Labour would change anything. This is a safe seat, by the way, for Labour for many years. And it's always, you have, for the past maybe 70 or 80 years, you have 10,000 votes differences between Labour and Conservatives. So this majority could be slashed if we have an organized campaign, because people are, between two brackets, are sick of the Labour Party. And many Muslims of Arabs, sometimes they don't vote, or when they vote, they just for granted tick for Labour Party because they think this is a progressive Labour Party, pro-migrants, pro-Muslims, pro-minorities. While if you come and look into what the Labour Party is doing, their performance as opposition within the parliament, you would see that they're doing the minimum, really. And we've seen this with the Member of Parliament Ealing North.
I think it's telling that, firstly, on several occasions, according to my recollection, whenever either Keir Starmer or one of his shadow cabinets are asked about major policy changes, they say that there aren't going to be any.
Yeah.
So in a way, we're not going to change much. So okay, so what's the point? That's one thing. But also, I mean, and you referred to this, Emma, and in my books at least, and I'm pretty sure that many others share with me the feeling that what's happened in 2019, and use the term scandalous. The fact I still remember, major figures within the Labour Party, such as Peter Mandelson and others, happily declaring on public TV that they would campaign against Jeremy Corbyn. Yeah. They would actually advise people to vote Tories in order so that Jeremy Corbyn is prevented from winning. That is beyond the pale.
Absolutely beyond the pale. Why he's not thrown out of the party, I have no idea. Because any normal member campaigning against their party has to be thrown out. It's one of the basic rules that you don't do that. And yet there were lots of people doing that. And certainly within our group, I mean, as far as our local CRP is concerned, it has been taken over by the right. It's always been a very, very left-wing local party as long as I've been a member, and that's 35 years in North Cairn, I think, or longer. That's been taken over, but that is with the support of the party. They have shut down any kind of debate. We were given a list of things we weren't allowed to discuss. Certainly not allowed to discuss Gaza or anything that matters to people in that part of the borough. I found it absolutely appalling. And then, of course, I was blocked from restanding for a list of absolutely nonsensical reasons. people were appalled by that. It was really quite shocking that I had won. I turned over in 2017. I turned a large majority, 7,000 majority, over to, when I think that was my vote. It was partly my vote. It wasn't for Labour, because a lot of people voted for not because I'm a goddess, but because of what I represent, because I'm born and bred and I know the issues there and I fight for everybody. And that's, so if Labour now thinks they can steal the vote that I created, I think they're going to find that very difficult, because that won't resonate in the same way across the
Another
borough.
point is that, Labour, there's no democracy within the Labour Party now. Even a lot of people now complain about the selection process. There's no democracy in selecting member of parliaments for the upcoming general election.
So appointed.
There's no hustings. They're appointed. This is an autocracy. This is tyranny. I don't see a democracy here. And this is why in my constituency in Ealing North, we have a lot of people who abandoned the Labour Party. We're talking about hundreds of active members who left the party and intending to join other parties, and they will never vote anymore for the Labour Party. This is big,
I think the word that I constantly hear about former Labour Party voters is that our votes are taken for granted.
Absolutely.
And in a way, I mean, for instance, talking about, let's say, the Muslim vote. I mean, the Muslim vote, according to many surveys over the course of the past 10, 15 years, is that no less than 80%, sometimes up to 87% of the Muslim vote traditionally goes to Labour, sometimes out of habit, ignorance, and sometimes coercion due to certain structures within the community. But it feels like things are changing, because a recent poll carried out by some Muslim survey group found that the figures from 2020, I believe, in comparison to 2023, were slashed from 87% to about 41% or 42%.
That's what we've been finding in certainly in North Kensington, in the wards where we have a high proportion.
And that represents.
It has been halved, pretty much halved.
And that represents at least 1 million votes. I mean, we're talking probably about 40%, but we're talking about 1 million votes. So it's
going to be very impactful. Look, we're talking about also the Muslim and the Arab community generally across the UK. It's good within this atmosphere, and after or through this ongoing genocide in Gaza, we have a lot of initiatives. A lot of people are coming to speak about politics, to be involved in politics in a way or another, even tweeting or speaking and writing in the social media that they will never vote Labour Party. We didn't see this within the Arab and Muslim community. So we have this sort of awareness where people are angry with against the Labour Party, and they want to sort of make a revenge or a protest vote in the next general election. And it's good, at least if we organize ourselves as communities, as ethnic minorities, and we ensure, as you said, we don't give our votes for granted, because as I said earlier, Labour think that's easy vote. We're not going to do anything. Muslims would just vote for us for granted. This should change. And I think it's our moment now to get this change.
I agree with you, absolutely. What you're saying about democracy, certainly within our CLP, we had discussions of all kinds, and they brought people in. We couldn't find a hall big enough that was standing room only. Some of the debates we had and so on, and the speakers that we brought in, there were like 80, 90 people, which was a lot, because our membership in Kensington CLP went up 5 times when Jeremy became leader, and it has dropped back now, and it's continuing to drop back. But now when they go to CLP, which I don't think is very well attended from what I gather, they're given instructions. They're not having a discussion about anything. They're given instructions of what they can and can't do.
Exactly. This is tyranny. This is not democracy.
And by the way, this is happening up and down the country.
Absolutely.
I travel a lot, and I speak. I was in Bristol the other week. I attended the NEU conference in Bournemouth. I was in the Midlands a couple of weeks ago, and everywhere I go, it's the same. It's the same. I mean, the kind of turning away from Labour, the kind of disgust, to be perfectly honest, from Labour. One thing that I'm pretty sure you're fully versed in and fully aware of, but one thing, I, as well as the entire world, has noticed from the pro-Palestine campaign, the demonstrations on the street, the kind of the narrative on both mainstream media as well as social media, is that we have at least 50% of that compiled of white British,
Yeah.
ordinary folk.
Yeah.
So whilst we might be, talking about, the Muslim or the Arab communities within your constituencies, but I'm pretty sure you're aware of the importance of also speaking to people who feel that they have been orphaned by the behavior of Labour and by the absolute collapse in government by the Conservatives.
Absolutely. So there's the peace movement, which is certainly on board. Of course it is. And I've been a member of CND for a very, very long time, and I'm on the council now. That's, obviously that has been mobilised. Many of the unions have been mobilised. So there's a kind of natural allyship among all those groups. And certainly when I go out on the marches, which I do as often as I can, there's endless groups there, including, of course, the Jewish bloc, as we know.
Yeah.
So I'm not having any of that nonsense, thank you.
Absolutely.
And there's so many different groups out. And there's, this group, there's so many of the different unions come out. It's really impressive. And that is the movement. The movement is out there in the street, showing not only support from people who are personally affected, and, in my neighborhood, the people that I know, Palestinians I know, have lost a total of about 300 family members. And everybody knows that. And that's a scar that runs very, very deep. And so we're always, it's not just something we've read in the papers and been appalled by. These are people that we know who've lost, 60 family members overnight and so on. And we're hearing that regularly, which is horrific. So it's the allyship is huge. For what is happening. It's because it's unbearable, and it shows the lack of humanity in the party that should be standing against it.
Indeed, there is a majority, as you know, of support across this country, white and non-white,
absolutely,
for the Palestinian people. Looking and monitoring the discourse of the media outlets over the past few months, you would see even like a break from the traditional position. Look at LBC Radio, for example. Known for its right-wing views, there's massive criticism of Israel. Sometimes they voice pro-Palestinian, views, although they're known of their very pro-Israeli position. And this is reflected, in my view, across the country. Yes, there are friends, a lot of friends for Israel in this country, although it's a minority compared to the Palestinian solidarity groups across the country. But there is some sort of an awakening in this country that it's no longer the case. We should not be supporting Israel. We should stop arms exports to Israel. Israel should be punished. And as you know, Israeli leaders will go to the ICC soon because of the war crimes they're committing in the Gaza Strip. So this is our moment within this general election. At least.
And I think that the point that Emma mentioned, and rightly so, is that the Jewish bloc, the anti-Zionist, the anti-Israel Jewish bloc, has been one of the most vocal and has been one of the most elementary in arguing against and it's tragic, to be honest, how diluted the accusation of anti-Semitism has become, simply because it's thrown about absolutely without any consideration to the consequences. Anti-Semitism, just like Islamophobia, just like various other forms of racism, are real. And they are, and they threaten the fabric of society. But to use them so frivolously, so casually, to just basically anyone who dares criticize Israel to be accused, it becomes devalued, and unfortunately,
this is part of the Israeli strategy. The Ministry of Strategic Affairs Israel, over the past 20 years, they have drawn a lot of plans, including campaigns to delegitimize the other, which is anyone vocal and supportive of the pro-Palestine rights. And it's the case now. If you say anything, you are being accused of anti-Semitism. We've seen what happened the last 2 days on Saturday on the March in London, when we saw the campaign for, against anti-Semitism. One of their leaders did this
the CEO,
sit-up.
CEO.
It's a CEO.
Yeah.
He did a sit-up.
Provocation.
Provocation. And this is intentional, because the Israel lobby is working tirelessly now to block the pro-Palestine marches, because they feel the heat. They lost the public opinion here. They even lost the support of their supporters here, and many of them. So this is why we see a rise in the use of anti-Semitism as a weapon to delegitimize us as a movement here.
And I'm just glad we've got Sadiq Khan as the mayor at the moment, because he has spoken for the right to protest. I was at an iftar recently at our big mosque, where he spoke, and he was absolutely, there was absolutely no nonsense about it. That people have the right to protest, and they weren't hate marches; they were peace marches with people calling for it. And he went through. It was really impressive, and he was speaking in front of the Tory MP and the Labour candidate, and I'm sure they were very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But he spoke his truth, and he's been, I think, has been quite impressive. A lot of people wouldn't agree with everything that he's done, but he's not to be moved on that.
Because part of our audience is the young, and I believe that again, a really significant part of the peace movement, of the pro-Palestine movement, of the anti-genocide movement, call it as you may, has been the youth.
Yes.
The student movements, the youngsters, the children. Because, in a way, those who have been wiped out from Gaza, thousands upon thousands, have been children.
Yes.
Children.
Yeah.
If you consider minors under 18, we're talking about probably around 22,000. If we're talking about minors as in babies and the such, we're also talking about thousands upon thousands. And in a way, that has resonated around the world. I see what's happening across Europe. I see what's happening in America. I see what's happening in Australia and the such. And we find that the young are part of this movement. Now, many of those might not have the right to vote this time round. However, they could be a really important part of the discussion.
Absolutely. It's interesting, having seen over the past 14 years, as each sort of cohort of people have gone through, they've gone through uni, it's been defunded, they've got massive fees, debts and so on, absolutely humongous debts, which they may never be able to pay back. And over the years, it's kind of radicalized them. A lot of people who never really thought about it, they just want to get through and get a job. They're now really angry politically, and it's radicalized. So there's people in their 30s who've been radicalized, but as you say, all the way down, people are being disadvantaged. Universities being stripped of funding, and the tuition not as it should be, and the schools being defunded. And there's this whole generation who have been disadvantaged by the way that the Tory government has behaved, and the Labour government, well, clearly it's just continuity Tory, isn't it? How they will continue to behave. They will continue to be angry. So I think we've got a big cohort. It's not only the teenagers, which it's undoubtedly teenagers. I've seen a lot of radicalism among teens. And I remember in the early 70s, we were quite radical. We went on strike and so on. That's happening again now. There's a lot to be angry about then, a lot to be angry about now. But it's all the way through into the mid-30s, people stuck with these massive fees, debt and so on that they will never pay off, and they can't buy homes. So there's 20 years or more of people who are angry and radical looking for solutions. And that's up to us to
it's fascinating. It's fascinating how, all these grievances and issues at home, whether it be the cost of living, whether it be education, university fees, whether it be NHS, whether waiting lists and the such, whether it be transports and transport expenses, all those issues, they somehow all come and tie together with the issue of Gaza. And someone mentioned this to me, and it was quite, to be honest, quite an enlightening moment. They said it all ties in because it speaks of the moral compass of the candidate.
Absolutely.
It speaks about, if you don't care about the fate of children in Gaza, then how could you possibly care about, the fate of education in the UK?
Well, it's the social contract that has been broken, I see.
Absolutely.
So the social contract, you pay your taxes, you vote people in, and then you trust them. And that is the contract, basically. You trust them to do what they should with your money that you've paid in.
And we're seeing...
And that's broken now.
And by the way, we're seeing an incredible historic movement. Only yesterday, I was reading about report after report of what's happening on United States...
Columbia University.
Yes.
University campuses. There are at least 11 campuses where, I mean, students are refusing to attend classes where they are absolutely occupying campuses, where they are, raising the issue of Palestine, but also speaking of local politics. I mean, when you have someone who's a 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old speaking with such brilliant clarity about, why is it that we have 2 million homeless people on the streets every single night here in the United States, when we can afford to provide wars with billions upon billions, including Israel. And this young lady had seemingly done her research and said, Israel is doing far, far better than we are. And they have a free healthcare system. They have
all paid by the US. Yeah.
So why is it that we are providing these kinds of questions that in my, past, life of activism 30, 35 years ago, never would those questions be, aired in public whatsoever, are now being spoken.
Yeah, they're very well educated, I think, politically education. They've done to themselves through social media, actually.
It's incredible.
They've educated themselves because there's very little in school, and there should be, actually. They should be.
I think people feel the social injustice in general, about everything we go through in our everyday life here, the NHS cuts, the austerity, the high cost of living, etc. And add to this, you have the Gaza genocide, where you see the opposition and the government just adopting the same pro-genocide position, not even calling for a ceasefire for months and months, and just starting to call for a ceasefire when the decision made in Washington D.C., which is part of the foreign policy failure in this country, where everything is made up in D.C. and we have to follow. Sadly, speaking, the government and the opposition are not doing enough on this issue, let alone in other local issues. And I can't see even Labour Party in the future. And that's a message for the young, if the watching and hearing us. Voting Labour in the next general election will just get you another Tory government. Absolutely. This is why we should look for alternatives. At least if we don't win in many of the seats, at least we send a message for Labour in the next general elections that our votes will not come for granted. Absolutely. You have to pay the price. You have to ensure that there's a tuition fee issue. The tuition fee issue is being solved. Austerity is not backing it, because they will not reverse, simply Labour will not reverse most of their policies.
No. I mean, the money is there, as we know. There is money there. It's just going in the wrong direction, isn't it? On Trident, for example. It's
incredible how immediately tens of billions can appear. When, for instance, when nurses who ask for pittance, an increase on their salaries, all of a sudden we don't have any money. I mean, it's something that people are. I mean, this is what I think is the game changer, that people are now more inclined to fact check.
Yes.
And also they have better memories. And maybe the presence of social media helps, because people are watching these things, they're hearing these things. All of a sudden, new ideas are being aired and being proliferated and the such, and therefore people are more in tune. So when a politician comes out and just spews whatever, they've been told or they've rehearsed or they've learnt, immediately people latch on and say, hang on a minute.
Yeah, they know it's nonsense.
And
absolutely right. And this is why the, independents and all the other smaller parties are coming out. And I do think that in time there will be a third party. A proper third party. I'm not talking about the Lib Dems, because I don't think they're anywhere at the moment, as you said. But that will happen in time. I don't think we can make that happen. And a lot of people want Jeremy to start a new party. I think that's going to happen. It should come from the people, actually. And all the independents and the people who are joining other parties, it will come out of that in time. And that's, this is our message of hope, really, for the future, that there are better things to do. And what we need is independent voices in Parliament who will scrutinise what the future of the government is doing.
I don't want to necessarily put you on the spot and ask you for a prediction. However, in light of what we're seeing, what shape of Parliament can we expect? How will Westminster look? I mean, let's talk about independents and those who are in smaller parties, the Workers' Party, for instance, and others. I mean, realistically, in light of what we're talking, I think it's a fairly safe bet to say that Jeremy Corbyn is going to win. maybe one or two others also, but realistically, what are we talking about? Are we talking about what, 5, 10, 15 independents and members of smaller parties?
I wouldn't. I don't.
I know it's a very unfair question.
No, but I think there will be, and I do believe there will be enough people who are not Tory, Labour, or Lib Dems to have a voice,
right,
for people, for the grassroots, for people and their everyday issues. I do think there will be whatever party they're from, or whether they're independents. I do think there'll be enough of them to create a noise. And on some issues, certainly we'd vote together. And I've said, there are some policies of the Green Party that I'm going to borrow. Thank you very much. And I'll tell them.
SNP. The SNP as well?
Absolutely. And if where the policies fit with what is needed on the ground, then I will certainly adopt that and vote with them. And that gives us far more freedom than being whipped on everything.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I mean, let's not forget that in 2019, the Conservatives needed the 9 members of the DUP to actually form a majority government. So whilst 9 out of 650 doesn't really mount to anything, but ultimately they were instrumental in the government being able to govern.
Indeed.
So we're talking, okay, so let's hope. Let's hope, because, and this is the theme that I want to get to next, the kind of thirst and motivation for real change that we're seeing here in the UK, as well as across the Atlantic in the US, I sense mirrors a worldwide will and desire for a real change on the global stage. Because the same discussions you see, I mean, it's just because we have an election coming up that it's urgent. But to be perfectly honest, in my conversations with my friends and colleagues in Australia, in South Africa, in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Canada, wherever, they are having the same conversation. They're saying, listen, we're tired of this.
Well, indeed, look, even looking at the polls here, the recent polls, I think they were like exaggerating on the numbers that the Labour would win. Given the atmosphere we're living in and this rise of independents and other smaller parties, given this Gaza factor is really a factor. It's like the NHS, the cost of living is still, for many people, they're considering this unethical positions by both the government and the opposition. And as such, I think the results cannot be expected, No one could really, maybe the Labour would just get back its red wall, most of the seats traditionally went Labour and then went to Conservatives. I think they will get back these seats, but I don't see Labour is winning. I mean, if we have an organized movement of independents and other parties, and if we manage to organize ourselves, we could deprive the party of at least like a clear victory in at least 100 seats. If we're looking on the numbers, look, we're talking about Workers' Party, at least putting maybe 200-300 candidates, and look at least maybe you have 30 or plus independents, standing. This at least, if you have, for example, if Uxbridge and South Ruislip, Labour Party would need only 700 votes. If there is a strong candidate, pro-Palestine candidate, a Muslim candidate, would easily, with 2,000 votes, would deprive Labour from a win. So this is strategy of tactical, allocation of candidates somewhere here or there could deprive Labour from an unexpected win and victory here. So I don't think that this poll that came recently was accurate. There are many factors that could have an impact. Yes, Labour would win, but not with these numbers.
No, the polls are often wrong. I mean, in 2017, people thought it was a bit of a joke. I was just a paper candidate, right? But the things changed during 2017.
What was the?
And it was right towards the end. They go, "Oh, you're not going to win. You're not going to win." And then somebody contacted me and said, "Well, forget the polls. Look at the bookies." So the bookies just want to win. They don't care about all the politics, right? They just want to win. And with it, 3 weeks before the election, the bookies were all betting on me madly. And some of my family friends bet on me and they made a great deal of money, actually. So the polls don't always get it right, do they? They really don't. I didn't have a hope in hell of winning and I won by 20 votes. But that was a massive turnaround. Because it was Kensington,
Of course.
And people not understanding the area. But that could happen anywhere. Somewhere.
And the unique thing that I really think is about Jeremy Corbyn and his followers, the followers of Jeremy Corbyn are those hundreds of thousands. We didn't test this in
Jeremy
2019.
Corbyn made Labour the biggest political party in all of Europe.
We're talking about millions of voters. Where will they vote? Will they vote for Keir Starmer and his right-wing party? Will they go for will they just refrain from voting? I think they could be a main factor to change the results in the next
There's no real enthusiasm from what I'm gathering for even people within the party who are going out campaigning. They're really struggling to have any kind of enthusiasm. Whereas, as I say, when you present yourself on the doorstep and say what you're standing for, I say, I'm just standing for you. Yeah, it's what you want. That's what I'm doing. And they go, that's fantastic. And there is that enthusiasm. You had to get the message out, which is the big thing, isn't it, for us, Sameh?
Yeah, a lot of people would do a protest vote, yes. Yeah. But I think it will resonate. A lot of pro-Corbyn, the Corbynista, this momentum, those people who are against Keir Starmer now, I think there'll be a main factor in deciding the results in many of the seats. Even these red walls, you're talking about traditionally hard left, voters who always tend to vote Labours and only voted because of Brexit, in 2017 or when they voted for the Brexit for Boris Johnson. With his massive majority. I think they would not vote anymore for Labour, or at least Labour would lose a lot.
What of trade unions? What of trade unions? Because when you meet with trade union members, they always complain of the status of Labour. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, it always seems that
Well, partly, Labour needs them because that's where, apart from them, they're huge donors. They're still getting a lot of money from the unions, so they keep them sweet, I guess. But why some of the unions are sticking with Labour, I have no idea. I don't think they have positive plans for their workers at all. Enigma. I really don't. I do think that's going to change over time from people I know within the unions that I'm in contact with. That they won't stick it out forever, but it's so deeply embedded. It's in their DNA to be part of what used to be a Labour movement. It just isn't anymore because they betrayed the Labour movement completely.
Well, I don't see Keir Starmer care a lot about unions these days, given that he's got more corporate funding and from international donors and
that's big companies. That's precisely the point that I wanted to mention. Is that it's not and this is why it's so confusing when it comes to trade unions, because they have been let down so hard, them and their members by Labour over the course of the past 10 years, 15 years or the such, because of the fact that Labour, apart from the time when Jeremy was in, Labour have so shifted towards corporate powers and towards big funders and donors and the such, that it seems that, they have sort of sidelined trade unions and the interests of workers and the interests of...
I do think that will change because there are hundreds of thousands of people out there who've been pauperized by the current system, and they're going to remain pauperized when Labour comes in. I think there'll be a big wake up. Maybe that is when the unions will start defunding and disaffiliating. Will be the point at which Labour says, actually, no, we can't afford that. We've got to keep on shipping our money over to Israel or wherever, or to pay for Trident, which is the most hideous weapon on it, is a genocide weapon, which we dare not use. Why are we doing that? And so maybe that will come to the point. I know a lot of union people I speak to are really struggling to support Labour, and I don't think that'll last forever. I really don't.
What about the media? How is your relationship with the mainstream media, local media as well as the national media? Are you getting the kind of coverage that you think your campaign
Not yet.
deserves?
I approached a lot of media outlets locally, and I spoke to some of the editors. They said, they're going to do it later on. They're going to give fair time for everyone. And this is only when the election is near. So they don't have plans to do anything now. And national media, we're expecting to be smeared, to be attacked because of our, work for the pro-Palestine movement, the social justice. And personally, I was smeared 100 times by the Mirror, the Times, the Telegraph, BBC, Sky News for the pro-Palestine position that I voiced before. And the fact that I was from the Gaza Strip myself, was born there, born and bred Gaza, before I came to this country. I think this made me a scapegoat for the traditional. Even these days, when I started my media outlets, some media outlets are trying to get some of the videos where I spoke to the Muslim community. Said, you spoke to some in a venue where you have right wing, blah, blah, blah. So I expect to be, attacked, smeared, but I've paid this price long ago when I stood for my people and my rights. And I expect to pay it again and again, but I don't care. This is the social injustice that we have to resist. We have to stand up against hate, against Islamophobia, against those right-wing power who are trying to discredit us and what we stand for, simply.
You, Emma?
Absolutely.
Any luck with the...
Well, obviously, when I left the party, I was leader of the Labour group of councillors at the time, and that was quite a big story. So there have been things like that where there's been a kind, and then when I decided to stand as a candidate, parliamentary candidate, there was another story. So there have been moments, but I think it will change when they start doing proper polls, because actually I think I know where the polling is going, and it's not what some people say. They haven't asked, are you going to vote independent? That's not appearing in the polling at all. So I think that will change. But apart from that, we have to make our own
people
media.
what, Labour, Conservative or Lib Dem? Is that what they're asking?
Lib Dems
they don't
really
include the
nowhere
independents
now.
in most of the polls.
Yeah, Lib Dems are nowhere really at the moment in the borough. But that's so I do think as we get nearer the election, that's going to change, and they will come for me. That's no doubt about that. They've come for me before, if I have to have police protection again, it's not very nice actually. But I'm doing it. I'm doing what is right. I feel I can't not do it. People are asking me daily, "You got to stand. We need you back," and so on. So there's a huge movement to have a third way. So I don't count the Lib Dems, but as far as the media is concerned, most of them are in the pockets of the right wing, as we know.
Unfortunately.
So we have to make our own media like this. Thank you.
Good luck to both of you.
Thank you. Thanks.
It's fantastic. An excellent discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.